Hey everybody, Wurm here. Welcome back to, well, it's not really a game, right? Normally I say welcome back to Wurm. That's what I've been saying these days. But today what I want to do is I want to talk about Wurm because with the Steam sale here and Wurm being slightly on sale, a number of you have been asking me about the game. Should you buy it? Is it worth it? Those kinds of things. The kinds of questions I really don't like getting into because I don't do reviews. But what I want to do is actually just spend a little bit of time talking about the game from my experiences and kind of let you know what I've really been enjoying about it. Obviously, I've been playing a lot, but I want to talk about some of those points. I want to talk about some of the things that you may not be into, that obviously I must be okay with, but I can understand that other people may not be into them. So I kind of want to go through those in order to help you perhaps have a better understanding whether this could be the game for you. Now, I'm going to apologize right away for the footage in the background because I have no idea what that's going to be right now. I'm actually in a hurry. I just got home. I wanted to record this really quick. I'm going to have to find some footage, hopefully of Wurm, and get that back there. And I have no idea what that's going to be. So anyway, we will get to that in a bit. But basically, I want to kind of run through some big points. I actually just jotted down some kind of words here. Exploration, crafting, building, combat, player interactions, and then I've got the bad stuff. I've got a couple bullet points there. So just little things here, and then I'm going to expand on these as best I can. It's not really that organized. That's about as organized as it is. I don't have anything else on the sheet really. So I'm going to be doing this off the cuff. I hope you guys, I hope this helps you out. So let's jump into this. So a while back, I kind of described my channel to people in the comments of a video. I was saying, yeah, pretty much play a lot of survival games. I really enjoy crafting and stuff. That's kind of my thing, crafting and building. And somebody replied and said, actually, I've always thought of your channel as being really focused about exploration. And that really kind of stuck with me. And I'm sorry, I don't remember who said that. It was some time ago. But I really thought about it, and I said, you know what, that really is kind of the big thing, and that the crafting and the building kind of goes along with a lot of those games that are really about exploration. And so I kind of focused on that, yeah, what you actually do, crafting and building. But it's true, exploration is kind of the big thing for me. Even going back to Minecraft, one of the things that I just loved doing in that game is just running in a direction. I loved exploring the world because, as I've told people, you never know what's over, the next hill or what's down in that cave. And to me, it was always fascinating. I've got to see what's down there. I've got to see what's over this hill. And maybe I would eventually settle down somewhere and say, oh, this is such a cool spot. I love the view. This is so cool. But I would always get restless. I would kind of craft and I would build and maybe start building a structure of some kind, and then I'd get that itch and say, oh, I gotta go back out. I gotta go find a new thing. And I would be out there doing that. And that really is kind of what drives me in these games. And it really, those kind of games I gravitate towards. So anyway, exploration, I'm going to start with that here because that's a huge thing for me. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about Wurm. You just have this giant world, and even though you can see the map, for example, in Minecraft, you don't know. It's generated as, you kind of are going out there, you can't see, that far ahead, for example. In Wurm, you can see the overall map, and you can know if I run this direction, I'll cross a lake, I'll go over this mountain, you know what's out there. But you actually don't know what's out there until you get out there. And for example, here on the Mythmore server where I'm currently playing, I spent 2 days exploring the world before I did anything else. I just ran around the world. I would run to the farthest, north I could and check stuff out, and then I would suicide my character back to the starting point, and then I would go in a completely different direction. I'd run through people's settlements. I loved it. I took it all in. That was almost a game in and of itself. I spent, over the course of 2 days, I think it was somewhere around 8 to 10 hours simply running in the game. That was all I did. And I loved it. I was telling some people about it, and they were like, wow, that's a lot of time to be running around. And I said, well, it's not a lot of time to be playing a game, though, and that's exactly what I was doing. That was my enjoyment, was the exploration. It was amazing fun. Even though at the end of that 8 to 10 hours, I had nothing to show for it except a character with degraded skills because he died a bunch of times, it didn't matter to me. It was a blast. I just loved running around and checking everything out. And that kind of helped me think of a couple places to perhaps settle down. And once, Reaper came in and Alexander, we started looking around, and I said, here's a couple spots I've been really thinking of, and we settled on one of those. That's where Weemdale is now. So anyway, that was pretty, that's kind of a big thing for me with these games, and Wurm really has that. It's got the variety of regions, different areas have different kinds of trees, and sometimes you just don't know. You may have to ask a global, hey, I saw somebody actually ask yesterday, hey, where can I find pine trees? And somebody, I think it was Scepter, kind of yelled out, he said, up here in the northeast where I am, got tons of them. So, and that would be a trip, and that's some travel time, and that's what I really enjoy too. That, okay, it's not that easy. It's up in the Northeast, great. Okay, well, that might be a 40-minute walk for you. Maybe an hour if you're kind of wandering a bit. It's out there. So, and that kind of gets into the player interactions a bit too. I'm going to get to that a little bit later, but essentially, when you have the region set up that way, it really helps to work with other people. You've got pine trees up there. That's awesome. Do you mind, if I get some, in your area, I might come up there, or somebody might just throw that out. Hey, if you're looking at pine trees, come to my area. I've got a bunch cut down. You can take those. And then that person might say, oh, cool. Well, what we have is a ton of iron. If you need any, I'll bring it. Yeah, sure. And you guys do an exchange, and it really kind of adds to that based on, the regional factor plays a kind of a big role in that, based on, what you can actually have access to. Now, fun story while I was exploring, I actually don't have the map up in front of me. In fact, I'm going to bring my browser up. This is just going to take me a second here, because I'm doing this all off the cuff here, so you have to bear with me. I'm going to bring up the Mythmore server. It looks like it may not be loading right now. Okay, maybe that's not going to come up. So I'm gonna completely forget the name of this place. It was south of us. There's a fort down there on the lake. I totally missed it. Maybe I'll put it up on screen here. I was running around that area exploring, and you have a local area that extends out from you a certain distance. I'm actually not sure how far that is. And when you come into range of people, they will appear in your local chat, right? So when you chat in local, everybody can see that in that area. I did that, and the person that was there gave me a shout out, and I apologized to this person because I forgot who it was. But I was running through, and they said, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And I was totally taken, off guard. I was like, "Oh, hi, sorry, I'm just passing through." He said, "Hey, if you do you need any food, any water? I've got stuff here, in my settlement." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. I'm actually okay. I packed for this, but I brought food and water along, but that's great." And they said, "Hey, anytime, come on by. I got that kind of stuff." And that really is a reflection of I hit that kind of thing everywhere I went. All over the map when I would pass through people's settlements, it was happening all the time. Hey, do you need anything? We got a lot of this, and people basically put their settlements together, and it's kind of like a thing of pride. You want to share it with other people, and so that player interaction based on exploration and everything, kind of tying it back to that, is a really key thing that's been a lot of fun in the game. Crafting is a really big element when it comes to these kind of games as well, and that's definitely no different in Wurm. There's a lot of crafting here. A lot of people will describe it as deep, for example, because there's so many materials to work with and so many different workbenches and tools to use. And even further than that, there's other intricacies as well. For example, metal has to be heated to this really hot temperature, and then when you pull it out to work in your inventory and you're crafting with it, it will cool down. And so if it does cool down, you actually have to put it back in and heat it up. Some things have to be tempered in water. So there's not just the simple mechanic of take this plus this and merge these together. There's oftentimes the other little variables in there. Another element here that is pretty interesting, I think, is that you might have, say, a lump of iron that you're working with, and it's going to have a certain weight to it. And when you make things, they require that not just that you have a lump of iron, but rather that it requires a certain weight of iron, essentially. So it may require like 5 kg of iron, and your lump is only 1. So you actually have to combine a number of lumps together to make sure you've got the 5. Now, if you fail, that can actually use a little bit of that weight. So you got to make sure you have more than that to kind of account for it. And as you craft things, it starts to take out of that. You may only be making nails that require a small amount of that, and 1 lump can go a long way, for example. So there's things like that. Once you get into the quality as well, you want to make good quality items, because if you make, for example, poor quality chisel, I made one for my friend. He was chiseling away, making stone bricks out of the rocks we had mined, and he broke it, and we were like, wow, that broke really fast. But it was a terrible quality chisel, and he was just sitting there cranking out bricks. So the lower the quality, the kind of quicker they get damaged, and you have to repair them. And there's a repair mechanic. Interestingly enough, it doesn't take any materials. You actually just right click and repair. Its cost comes in quality though. So if you got a quality 50 item out of 100, that's 50 is pretty good actually. And you're repairing it, and the damages, if it gets up to 100, it breaks. So let's say it's at 50 or 60 damage. As you repair and the damage comes down, so it's getting fixed, the quality goes down as well. So there's that kind of measure of, well, I'm losing quality every time I repair this. So that's kind of the cost to it there. And anyway, it makes it really interesting. So the better quality tools you have and everything, and the for example, your workbench, your tool, you have your skills and everything. The combination of all these things work together to kind of provide you with materials of further varying quality. So as you increase the quality of the tools, you're creating better things. So you can maybe make better tools, for example, and on down the line that becomes a focus where you want the high quality tools and you want high quality items to sell, things like that. So it's a pretty interesting system. It's nothing super crazy, but there's a good amount of things there to craft, for example, and there's intricacies there that can be kind of fun and new. So that element actually makes it pretty fun. Now, one of the things I really enjoy is being able to kind of specialize in something and then being the guy for that stuff, for example. And in Wurm, you can really do that. You could mine a lot, let's say, and you get your mining skill up and your pickaxe skill, for example, things like that, get high enough. And as you get going and you're working with a group of other people and you want to mine, for example, you kind of got somebody who's doing it. Another example, maybe somebody's really working on butchering, so a mob comes in and gets killed. You all kind of jump in there to attack it a little bit. It dies, and you say, "Hey, let Reaper butcher it." You know, he's got the butcher knife. That's kind of his thing, and so you let them do that. Now, characters also have what's called an affinity, and your character can discover this after a bit of time in game. You look at your skills list, you'll end up with an asterisk next to an ability, and that means you actually gain that skill faster than anybody else does. It's randomly chosen, which I think is kind of fun, but it kind of, even though it's just a slight bonus, it's kind of an indication that that's the guy for this thing. And obviously you don't have to go by that. It could be that your skill is butchering, let's just say, but that doesn't mean you have to be the butcher guy. I mean, somebody else can have a higher skill even, or even if they're the same level as you, it's not a huge difference such that you're saying, no, don't let this person do that. But like I said, there's so many skills in the game and so many things you could focus on, even though you don't have to. You could actually do well on all of them, given enough time. But things tend to work out that you end up doing some things more than others, and so you kind of become the person for that. We need some more food cooked. You're kind of the cook because you've made a bunch and your skill is up there, so you make higher quality food. So every bite of that food is actually filling more of the bar. So if somebody's going to make the food, you should probably make the food. And for me, I love that kind of stuff because you really can decide that in Wurm. You could say, I really want to be the guy who makes bows, who makes arrows, and so I'm just going to make a bunch of those. I'm really going to get into that. I want to really make high quality bows. I want to be the person that people go to when they want a good bow. And because you can do that in Wurm, to me, that's just such a great thing. It makes it really, really fun. Now, in the game, all the items are actually player-made, which I think is another really great thing. There's not shops that you go to buy all this stuff. In fact, the merchants that you do run into that sell stuff, those are player-crafted things that they're selling through their merchants. So to me, that just kind of adds to the whole element of how important crafting is. This stuff does not exist until it's made by players themselves. So I'm kind of like looking through my quick little bullet points here. I mentioned that there's tons of things to make, which I think is great too. I love having a lot of variety, and there really is a lot of stuff. I think last night or the night before, I discovered you can make fireplaces, and I actually noticed that. I was watching a Vortex video he did recently, and he had put up a fireplace, and I was like, whoa, hold on, a fireplace, what? That's cool, because it was really lighting the area up, so I actually made one for myself. And I looked at my time, I'm like, I have over 200 hours in this game. I didn't know you could make a fireplace. There's so much you can make, and you actually have the list of everything that can be made, but there's so much there that, I'm not sitting there reading every single thing that can be made, and so I'm constantly discovering things. People will mention something, and I'm like, you can make that? That's kind of cool. Like, I totally want to make that. And for me, that's like a great thing to have in a crafting system. Establishing settlements in Wurm is a big part of the game. Basically, you've got the wide world in front of you. You go out and you stake your claim, set everything up as far as how large it is, and you get started. Now that you've got this plot of land, what are you going to do with it? And that's where building really comes into effect, right? You can build anywhere in the world, really, but there is decay. And so if you were to just go out on a mountaintop and build a house, it will decay over time at a much more rapid pace than if it's done within the deed borders of your own kind of settlement. So obviously you get people out in the world setting up these places, and you establish this community, right? You end up having neighbors, and you have these people that you're dealing with, the mayors, quote unquote, the owners of these other deeds, as as well as their citizens who are actual players as well, of course. And that this again, just like some of the elements of exploration, ties into player interaction. You're dealing with the other people around you, and that's one of the things I found very enjoyable about the game as far as the settlement goes, is that you have your neighbors and you say, hey, I'm kind of thinking about making a road out to the water, but you're right by the water, like, do you want me to do the road to you? Like, would that be cool? And you actually work with them oftentimes in team speak, but of course you can do it with chat in the game. One of the things about Mythmore is that they've got their own TeamSpeak server, and if you were to hop on that server, which is wide open, you'd see a lot of channel rooms for various settlements. Not all of them, but a lot. And you can request that, as we have done. So we have a room for Weemdale. We've got that password protected, but not everybody does. And so in game, I found myself every once in a while sending a message to somebody, say, hey, I'm with the Weemdale settlement. You guys are right by me. I was going to ask you about this, and I saw you're in TeamSpeak. Can I jump in your chat? Sure. And then we get to talking, right? And so we can kind of work things out that way. And that's something that you can't get in a lot of games because of the way Wurm operates with settlements and deeds and everything. There's certainly games like that have those elements, but obviously not a lot of them. And it's one of those things I found very fun, is I'm not dealing with an AI. I'm not saying I'll give you 5 crates for this, and it's not the system looking at it saying, well, your crates are valued at 73 and what you're wanting to get is valued at 150, so no. You're dealing with people and you're saying, hey, let's work together on this. Or, oftentimes when you're dealing with people that are near you, it's just fun to kind of just offer things up. We have somebody gimpy near us in his settlement of the Broken Spoke, and he made us a wagon. He brought the road out to us. We were actually going to bring the road out to the water, and one day we got on and the road came right up to our settlement, which was great. We're working with that now and how to connect it right into our town, line it up just the way we want. But those are the kind of interactions you can have, is work those kinds of things out. Turns out he needs a lot of dirt, and we actually have a lot of dirt, so we may end up bringing him some, or he may come pick it up. And again, those are the kind of diplomatic, I guess, actions you could say that you can have in Wurm and some similar games that you just don't get in most games. And it's a lot of fun. It's a really big enjoyable part of the game. Now, as part of the settlement, to get back to the building element, it's something I really enjoy. You can place some plans down on the tiles, and then you can go around the plan and decide, for the walls, what type of wall. Is it stone? Is it wood? Well, there's, a couple different kinds of each of those. And then gathering the materials and crafting those and putting together your structure. It's a lot of fun. It's a little time consuming, but that makes it a bit more rewarding. I'm going to talk about time stuff a little bit later at the end of the video, but anyway, that's a big part of the game, is that building element, building these structures. You can build as many as you can fit on your settlement, and of course you can expand your settlement, make it even larger, and that to me has been really the fun thing. And people can come on, and one of the things I get asked a lot is, I really want to play this game, but I don't have anybody to play with. It seems like you have to have people to play with, and it helps a lot to have people to play with. It's a very slow-paced game, which is okay, but it really helps a lot to have other people there working with you. So, and with Wurm, that's, people will jump in and say, hey, does anybody have a settlement I can join? And you're going to get answers from multiple people, because working together, you can get more done. So people say, hey, come on over to my settlement, and they may have some things. They may say, well, this area right here, I want to hold off because I want to make this big building, but this part of the settlement down here by the water, feel free to do whatever you want. You work with people in that way, and there's opportunities. Even if you went to a settlement and it turned out really to not be your thing, or you weren't really into that person, as it turns out, there's other people, there's other settlements you can go, and of course you can start to work on your own, or gather a group together and people maybe you get to know and say, hey, let's do our own thing. So there's opportunities there for that, even if you're playing by yourself. So definitely don't let that be a deterrent. But let me get back into this. So we've got obviously the buildings I talked about. You can do multiple floors and everything, stairs. You can do the furniture for it and everything, and it's all tied into the crafting system, right? So you can make all the furniture and fireplace and things like that. And to me, that's really fun, because again, it goes back to putting your mark in the world. This is my settlement. And essentially, one of the ways I was kind of looking at it was that your settlement is almost like your character in a very similar way. When you think about a character and you've got armor, and you're saying, oh, I love this black chest piece, so I'm going to get some dye and I'm going to make it look like this. And I've got this character that's recognizable. People can see it and say, oh, that's Wayne, for example. But your settlements often do that in this game, I've discovered, because the world is so big and people can be so far away sometimes that your only interaction with them is through the chats, through the text, and you don't visually see them. But in some cases, when they are nearby, or you are on those far off places just exploring the world, they actually aren't online, but you've seen their town. There's people I've talked to before multiple times in game, but I've actually never seen their character in person. However, I've seen their settlement multiple times, and so when I'm talking to them, that's the image I'm getting in my mind. I'm not thinking of the armor and the shield they're wearing. That's not the visual that I'm getting. I'm getting their settlement, where it is, that they have boats there, that it's on a hill, and I really love this spot. And so building is kind of a really big part of that because of the structures you can make in the settlement and everything. You really can make it your own. And to me, I get really tied into that. We've been planning a lot of Weemdale. This time versus the previous server, we just kind of naturally said, I'll just build this here. It was kind of, off the cuff. But here, Weemdale, we actually decided to lay out roads first, for example. So we get the roads down and the plots are all set out in almost a grid-like fashion. And then we'll just kind of do what we want and know that there's a structure there. We can build wherever we want except on top of the road, for example. And we know that we'll have a nice infrastructure for roads and pathways through there. So that's been a big part of the enjoyment for me and the other guys there, especially Alexander. He's been doing a lot of the terraforming, a lot of the road stuff. We made him the road czar, I guess you could say. So he's been all over that. But yeah, the building element, a lot of fun. I really enjoy it in Wurm. Now, I had combat next on the list, but really there's not a whole lot to talk about there. And while I'm okay with how things are in the game, that's mostly because I'm so focused on the other elements, the exploration, the crafting, the building. So I'm going to hold off combat to the end when I talk about maybe some of the negatives, maybe some of the reasons you might not be into Wurm, because I think that kind of falls in there and I don't have a whole lot of positive stuff to say about it. So I'm going to move on to player interactions. Now, I actually don't know how much more I have to say about that. We talked about that a little bit in the exploration, the building, and having the settlements and everything, but it is a really big part of the game. It's really one of the primary reasons we made our move from Weem's Landing on the private server to Mythmore. I looked at a couple of the larger servers and I actually explored them and wandered around. The Wyvern server, I went around that one for a while. Mythmore, I spent a good chunk of time wandering on there. And in both cases, when I went around, you would interact with people just naturally. I wasn't seeking anyone out, but I would pass through areas, settlements and stuff, and you end up with conversations like, hey, what are you up to? And it would stop me in my tracks, and I'd say, sorry, don't mean to walk through your area. At the time, I actually thought it was a geographical area rather than this area that extends from you and kind of follows you around. So I felt like, oh no, whoops, sorry, I'm in your territory. It is kind of a funny thing that some people, when you set up a settlement, it is nice that, in your local chat, you don't necessarily have another settlement. It can't be helped in some areas along the coast. It gets kind of crowded because that's really popular areas, but typically what I found is that people prefer, if you're going to make a settlement, you make it far enough away that you kind of exit their local chat, so that because when you have that overlap and you're using the local chat, everything can kind of blend together. But I think that's a bigger issue for some people more than others. For us, we actually really liked the idea of being far enough away in that regard, and we got that. But anyway, getting back to that, the player interaction is a really key thing. It's what we were really excited about. The more we talked about it, we thought this is great being on a private server. It's fun. We can do our own thing, but we're really only interacting with ourselves. And the two other settlements happening right now only have a few people, and there's really no reason to interact because it's a private server. The economy is not quite there, so there's really no reason to trade or anything. It's not really going to be an important thing. So if we move to a larger community server, that's where those kind of things really come into effect. And what I found is that absolutely is the case. While we are not necessarily trading right now because we're still building and everything, the interaction is there. We're constantly talking with people. I'm meeting new people every time I'm in the game. And it's just one of those, it's become one of those things that was even more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. And I was already pretty excited about it. So that's been a great thing. And it's one of those things, you can see a settlement and want to go check it out, get to know the person. And again, as I mentioned before, you kind of see them as the settlement and everything. And it's really fun because you can actually have alliances and everything. And when you have an alliance, it allows you to give permissions to alliance members. So you can set special permissions for people in your settlement and they can do the same. And in that way, it's kind of, you connect these communities. What I found is oftentimes it sounds like people are really allying with the people that are near them, but I think that's a totally cool thing. If you've got a southern coastline, for example, and you've got 5 settlements along the thing, it kind of makes sense to really kind of help each other out. You guys are nearby, and so you hook up with an alliance and just makes everything a little bit easier for everybody. And you can kind of decide, how much permissions, that really means. So there is no on-off essentially for the alliance. When you have an alliance, there's a lot of control over various permissions and everything. So I think that's a really cool thing. And like I said, it just kind of gets into that player interaction. But all of this overall, when I talk about player interaction, it's just kind of speaking to basically the server environment. And one of the things I would say for Mythmore is that what I found is that across the board, people have been really open, really inviting, very helpful. That includes in the global chat. People are really helpful. As much as I had read, I did some research on this. I looked around and, Steam and Reddit and everything, was asking people and trying to get a feel for what that was like, because I was a little afraid, okay, fine, big open server, but obviously it's online and you're dealing with a lot of other people. Probably a problem, right? But a lot of people had a lot of positive stuff to say about Mythmore. They did about other servers as well. But on Mythmore, I just constantly around every corner ran into great people who just wanted me to check out their settlement, see what they had going on. They wanted to share what they had. I've got a lot of this resource. Feel free to take what you want. And I just kept running into that everywhere, and it felt super welcoming. It was really I want to say a great change, but I haven't had a huge experience with a lot of negative stuff, but it is kind of everywhere to some degree, and I really just had the complete opposite experience on the server so far, and I've been really, really enjoying it. So I recommend this server in that regards. I recommend Mythmore as far as the community goes. The things I read seem to be right. That's not to say, again, that other servers are not that way. I feel like the Wurm community as a whole is probably like this, because the game takes a lot of time. You have to have a lot of patience, but it's not, when I say have to have patience, it's almost like it's requiring and it demands it of you. And the game, it does have a bit of a slower pace, but if you like these kinds of things, that pace is totally okay. It's fine. When I look at how much time I've spent on my house, for example, or how much time we've spent in the settlement, in game building a bunch of different things, that whole process from beginning to end is what's been a big part of the enjoyment. It's been playing with other people, interacting with everyone, and you couldn't really take that away. Even if the server crashed and disappeared, we may be disappointed that our buildings are gone and everything, but that entire time that was played was a lot of fun. It didn't matter that I spent 15 some odd hours probably working on my house. Little breaks here and there, but a good portion of that, gathering materials and building, you might look at that and go, oh, that just takes way too long. I look at that and say, well, I did that over the course of 2 days. It wasn't a big deal. 2 days to make a house, not a big deal, especially when I'm having fun the whole time. So, and you've got other people there. Again, the player interactions really kind of make it. So that's a really big element of the game. I think it's just as important to mention as the exploration, the crafting, the building, is that player interaction. Okay, now let me get to some of the negative stuff, the things that I found people taking issue with, that even if I didn't take issue with it, or I haven't really experienced it to the same level, I can totally get it and understand it. And I've got a couple bullet points here, so we're going to go through those. The first thing I have on here is the slow pace. The game, it does take a while to get stuff done. There's, I mentioned earlier, I spent, maybe 15 hours on my house. That can sound really outrageous. Part of me thinks back to even the Minecraft days, though, and I spent certainly more than that much time on making some really big area, and it's always kind of a work in progress. Here, it does take time to make a building, for example, especially anything of substance, in a 5 tile by 5 tile area that's 2 floors. There's a lot of work to go into that. But again, I really get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And I found that the pacing is just right for me on not just Mythmore, that runs at a 7 times speed skill gain, but so you're gaining the skills 7 times as fast as Wurm Online is what that means. And as you get the skills, you get faster at doing things. So that pace has been good for me. On the private server we were on before, it was 8 times. The 7 times, I noticed the difference just slightly. I think that range is pretty good for me. I think Wurm Online would be too much for me. And so that's what I mean by saying that I think this is a good pacing for me. What I found is that this 7 times, the 8 times, that it's the perfect middle ground for me. It takes a good chunk of time, but I'm not feeling impatient, and I'm not feeling like this is taking too long. So for me, it's perfect, but that's not going to be the same for everybody. I certainly have a couple friends that I've introduced the game to, and some more than others have been into it, and others not so much. Even people that I thought, oh, they're going to love this game. Even the slow pace is going to be awesome for them. They love this kind of thing. Played it and said, I can't do it. It's a little too slow for me. And it's totally understandable. Everybody's going to be different. Some people totally enjoy it. Some just can't do it. And that's totally fine. Now the next part here is combat. I kind of skipped over before. I mentioned that I had combat on the list, but I really didn't have much positive to say about it, so we're going to touch on that now as part of the potential negatives. Now, combat is not a negative for me, primarily because I just am not that concerned about combat. I'm really focused on the exploration, the crafting, the building, interacting with other players, helping other people out, working with people to do things, to build things. And that just kind of goes with really a lot of the games that I play. That's kind of the bigger focus for me. And while I can certainly enjoy a good combat system, I don't necessarily have to have it in all of my games. And so in this one, I really just don't do it that much. When mobs get pulled in, I will jump into fight so that I'm kind of building my fighting skills, but I really don't care. I'm not paying attention to how much I'm hitting, which is probably not frequently. And I'm not too worried even about how much damage I'm taking because I can heal that. I can bandage that up and that will come back in time. I'm not too concerned about that while I'm crafting things. So anyway, while combat is not really a huge thing to me, and so it's not really that big of a negative, I can certainly understand it. When you're looking at Wurm and you're seeing that there's trolls and there's dragons and, there's all of these different creatures and mobs to fight, and they have, varying names, which I think is all really fun. You can have aged creatures that are actually faster. You can have venerable. They have different descriptors that actually indicate to you what they're all about. Some may be fast attacking and everything, but less damage, things like that. And you can tell that from the description in their name. But anyway, as I said, the combat, it's not that much of a thing to me. But when you're looking at it from an outsider perspective and you see all those mobs and all these things, it can be an indication like, oh, cool, there's a lot of stuff focused on combat here. But the reality is that when you're in the game, you auto attack, and there is no movement required. As long as you are standing within the proper range, you're good. You're going to sit there and auto swing indefinitely until the mob drops. As I'm saying that, I'm like, that's boring. And I'm not going to lie, it's not an exciting combat system. It's an old system. It's been around a long time. There's really nothing that's super exciting about it. Now, I have to add a caveat there. I have not skilled up really high there. I haven't got to the point where I can actually kill some of these mobs relatively easily and have to worry less about combat. And other people have done that. I also know that there's various combat skills you can get. There's even magic effects you can use. I haven't got to any of that, so I don't know. Maybe that does enough to take it up a notch where I'd say, oh, combat's kind of fun. But at this point, at 200, and I think I'm at 275 hours in, I haven't experienced that. And not that you have to play that long to get combat up. I just haven't focused on it at all. And so I just simply have no idea. I can't really speak to whether it picks up and becomes more exciting. I can just tell you that for me, it's not exciting, but that to me, that's not a big deal. It might be for you. So the learning curve is the next point on here. A lot of people will say, it seems really complicated, it's hard, and it's easy for someone like me and other people playing the game to say, oh, it's actually not bad at all, it's totally easy. The reality is it's a very steep learning curve when you first come into the game. It's the UI is not, I don't want to say it's not done well, but for the time I think it was probably fine. But we've really become accustomed to, much more modern UI, much more it's easier for us. The UIs these days are made by people who are experts in UI design, in UX, user experience, the whole thing. So they know how to deliver these things to us in just the right way. At a glance, we know, just visually, we know how to do things. Now, in Wurm, it doesn't really work that way. And then we complicate that by saying that, while you do certain things this way, if you're doing this thing, which at a glance you'd say, well, it's the same. It's not. It really works kind of differently. And the reality is, once you understand it, then it's easy. Like, oh, okay, for this, I actually have to do this first. Boom, not a problem. You don't forget it. It doesn't complicate things later. You've got it. But that's all very hard to pick up in the beginning. I kind of imagine it. It's we say a steep learning curve. You could imagine it like a cliff, for example. Very hard to climb up initially. Once you get to the top, it's not a problem. And really, you don't even need a ton of time for that. What I thought was, it doesn't help for people to say, it's a steep learning curve, but really once you get past that point, it's easy. That doesn't help, because how long does that take, though? How long does it take to climb that cliff? And also for me, it's been a bit easier because I had a friend there and he was kind of standing behind me explaining things. Okay, well, double click this. That's how this works. And so it was almost like, for me, I had a rope that I got to pull myself up the cliff, and I had people below me pushing me up. So I can't come to you guys from this angle and say, oh, it's not a problem. Yeah, it's just this brief thing. First, when you get in, once you get past, it's easy, because for a lot of people, they jump in and they don't have someone there explaining it. They've got to read online. Even that may not be that clear. They have to try it for themselves. That's time consuming. So anyway, that's something to consider. Yes, there is a steep learning curve. But again, once, all of these things aside, like I said, it is not a super complex system once you've got it down. What I would say is, what I tell people right off the bat is, I try to summarize it this way. The big thing to the game is it's all about the contextual menus, essentially. In your inventory, you have your inventory full of things, and everything can be essentially activated for the most part. You can double click it, it becomes green, and it's now activated. You don't have to equip it and put it in your hands. A lot of what you do is just activating something. So if I have a hatchet in my inventory and a saw, I could double click that axe in my inventory, it's activated. Now anything I right click in the world, I will get a contextual menu, and it's going to tell me, for example, oh, you can chop this tree down. Now if I actually double click my chisel and right click the tree, there is no chop down option, right? So it's contextual, it's based on what is activated currently. Now for me, I'm mentioning that to you very specifically because that was a hang up for me. When I initially jumped in, I was like, okay, I want to chop a tree, I'm equipping my axe, nothing's happening. How do I do this? Okay, I've double clicked the axe, I click the tree, nothing happens. Okay, you have to right click it. And oftentimes, like for example, in the case of a tree, it's really the tile you're clicking, and then that's giving you the option. So for me, that was a big thing. It was like, oh, if somebody told me kind of how the activating thing works, and that it's all contextual based on what's activated, that's one of the steps up the cliff. It's a big step for me. And once I got that, then you really start exploring. You're like, oh, let me double click this and right click in the world. What does that do? Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay. And you really, it's one of those big steps. So I'm mentioning it now for those of you considering the game or playing it just now and kind of getting into it. I want to just pass on that tidbit because for me, that was a key thing in the beginning that would have helped me right off the bat. And I had people there kind of explaining that to me. Okay, so that kind of gets into the learning curve. The fourth kind of item I want to talk about here is the graphics. Some people get hung up on the graphics, and that's okay. I don't think it's a big deal, but I can understand some people may find it, immersion breaking, and that's fine. That's a personal preference. I get that. For me, the way I look at it is this game to me is like Minecraft in a lot of ways. And oftentimes games get compared to Minecraft. Oh, it's like Minecraft, but I'm trying not to do that. I'm just saying there's a lot of similarities, right? It's a big open world. You go do what you want, craft what you want, build where you want. They're similar in that way. And when I frame it to you that way, my point is that if you look at Minecraft, people say, oh, the graphics are terrible. They're not terrible necessarily. You don't prefer them, that's fine. Other people think it's totally great. It's totally fine. For me, it was fine. I don't mind the graphics of Minecraft at all. To me, it's about the exploration, the building, the crafting. It doesn't have to look amazing. I can get into it. And so for me, when you look at then Wurm, I say Wurm looks great. That's like more than I need. Because look at Minecraft. I was totally fine with that. But this is like, even more. It's more detail. We're talking textures and everything. Looking at a cow looks like a cow, you know what I mean? In Minecraft, sure, I know what that means. Doesn't necessarily look like a cow. It looks like a blocky, splotchy colored thing I understand is a cow. Here, they actually look like those things. So for me, if somebody says, well, the graphics are terrible in Wurm, they're old. They've been around a while, sure, but to me, I'm totally fine with it. In fact, I really enjoy it for the game. If it had much better graphics, that would be, sure, I'd take it. But I feel like I was explaining to somebody that there's kind of this, you kind of have to decide, I think, and oftentimes is the case. It's a budget thing, and sometimes budget is just time, sometimes it literally is money. And you've got the certain budget. You can't pour it all into making the most amazing graphics and pour it into, at the same time, making a super in-depth game that I feel like Wurm has a lot of stuff going on underneath the surface. The game is constantly surprising me. It's hard to do both. That's not to say it hasn't happened. It's just very difficult. And so to expect that always from every game, you just can't. It's just not a mature kind of expectation, I guess. When people say, this game really should have much better updated graphics and it's just ridiculous, and they get really super negative about it, to me that says more about a lack of understanding about how these things work. I've developed a game myself with friends. It took a lot of time and energy, and we really didn't have much there for the graphics. We were spending a lot of time on mechanics and everything. And when you understand that environment, you kind of understand how those two things work. It makes more sense. And so anyway, I would just say keep that in mind. I totally get people not being into the graphics and not liking it. That's a personal thing. But like I said, for me, it's exactly like it's perfect for me. Would I love better graphics? Absolutely, but I don't think they're terrible either. So anyway, I think that kind of covers it for the 4 items there. Again, just I throw those out again and say that to me those are not really that big a deal, but I've seen people get legitimately kind of hung up on those, and I would say if any of those 4, the slower pace, the combat not being that excited, the steep learning curve, or maybe the graphics, I'm mentioning those in the hopes that if you think those could be a hang up for you, maybe you would hesitate to buy the game. I would say hold off, maybe give it some more thought, watch some more videos, maybe mine, just throwing it out there. But basically that's why I mention it. When I say I love this game, I absolutely love it, I'm playing it a lot, obviously I really enjoy the game, that shouldn't by itself be reason enough for you to get the game, because there's a lot I'm okay with that you may not be. So anyway, that's really what this whole video is about, is me trying to just express to you as briefly as I could be, and this is being a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, my experience with the game and the way I'm feeling about the game and the way you might feel positively and negatively, in the hopes that, I don't know, maybe you guys can can help you make a more informed decision. I don't do reviews or anything. I don't really consider this a review. This is not really this kind of detailed look at the game in every little aspect. It's just me kind of spilling to you how I feel about the game, because a lot of you are asking me about it. It's currently, Tuesday. We've got the Steam summer, or the Steam summer sale. The Steam winter sale has just started. Wurm has gone on sale. It's only 10%, from 29 to 26 at this point. But to some people, that was a reason to maybe jump in. And right now the sale, I believe it says that it's going to extend through January 4th. When you look at the game, it says that price, ends January 4th. So I don't think it's going to go down anymore. I think it's going to be this price and then jump back up to essentially $30. So I wanted to get this out as quickly as I could, because I've been asked by so many of you, and I hope that it helps you make a decision one way or the other, however you feel, whatever you feel you need to do. I hope that it helps get you there and answers that question. So anyway, I do want to thank you guys for stopping in and listening to me ramble about all of this stuff. I hope it was coherent. Like I said at the top of this, I got home and I've just kind of spilled this all out, and who knows, maybe I'll watch this tomorrow and I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed and hope it makes sense. But please do leave me a like on this video if you guys enjoyed it. I would really appreciate that. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think. If you have any other questions about the game, anything specifically, I'm going to do my best to answer those in this particular video. I try not to go into too much detail in the other videos, because there's just a lot of it and I'm focusing on other things. But here, if you've got any specifics, lay them on me. I'll do my best to answer them. And there's some people floating around. Reaper's been floating around as well, answering some questions. So leave them here. I would appreciate that. And thanks again for watching, you guys. I will catch you next time.